Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Darkest Timeline. This is the Dark R Podcast, and I'm your host, KDG, horror fanatic and paranormal enthusiast. Before we start, I'd like to point out that this podcast is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to any existing person, living or dead, is purely coincidental. The aim of this podcast is to entertain and nothing else. Have you ever watched a horror movie and found a character who seems to know what's happening? The resident nerd who reads about folklore and tells the main characters what they need to do? Well, over the years, people around me have constantly told me that I was that guy. Fortunately, we don't really live in a horror movie, but all the same, I'd like to help my listeners out just in case they do manage to encounter the unexplained. For tonight's topic, we're gonna be tackling an appropriately plague-related entity, the modern zombie. I'm preparing you all in case this current plague we have spirals into something significantly worse than what we have. We'll be talking about how the modern zombie came to be, how the disease spread, and how to deal with it if in case it does happen here in our world. Because, come on, frankly, we need all the help we can get. By the end of all this, you're gonna have your basics down and may become a productive member in your zombie survival group for the apocalypse. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we tackle the modern zombie and how it actually plays out in the real world. First of all, let's set the stage. It's Sunday night, you're in your room, and you're listening to your favorite podcast while chatting with a friend. Suddenly, the news comes on. All the cities are locked down as your town declares a state of emergency. People are going into chaos, attacking each other, mainly biting and swiping at each other. The phone lines are jammed and there's no cell service. You start hearing your dog barking at the gate outside. You tell your friend about it, but she stops replying. Before sending out another message, your dog becomes more aggravated. You can hear someone outside the gate from your room. You start hesitating because it's late and you've no idea who it may be. You finally peek outside and saw that the streetlights are out. Your dog is still leashed near the front door and is still barking aggressively at the figure you see outside the gate. You can barely see in the dark, but you can make out a deep gash on the person's neck. You can't see his eyes, but you know that there's something deeply wrong as it hits you. You don't want to believe it, but it's here. The zombie apocalypse has started, and you're caught in the middle of it. What do you do? Usually, this is how a modern zombie apocalypse story unfolds. The news will tell you that there's been a series of attacks in the area, resulting in injuries. Depending on how the government works, the response may be quick or painfully slow. Either way, it gets worse before it gets better. But then again, from the outside world, it comes back to you and what you have to deal with. It builds some sense of dread as it slowly latches on with some details. It shows you a faint glimpse of what you're facing from a safe distance, to at least get some idea on what's happening. And maybe just a glimpse of what a fully transformed zombie might look like, which is, you already know what that looks like. However, these are just the tropes found in several movies that feature a modern zombie apocalypse. Think Dawn of the Dead from 2004, or more recently, #Alive, the Korean zombie film from 2020. We're mainly focusing on situations like these for tonight, as they are the most common for you guys. Okay? So let's begin. What is it that you're dealing with? Like I mentioned, you're dealing with a modern zombie. A modern zombie is a freshly animated human who is infected by a yet unknown virus. The virus can have many adverse effects, but essentially, it effectively kills the host by shutting down all bodily activity and reanimates it under its control. Very Magic the Gathering. The time it takes for reanimation is usually very quick, and once the reanimation is done, the host becomes aggressive, particularly moving as if with extreme hunger. The host tends to bite any living tissue that comes its way, and becomes relentless in pursuing their prey. Their prey, in this instance, being you and anything with a pulse near you. This creature, which we'll henceforth refer to as a zombie, shocker, will react to audio and visual stimuli as they mostly operate with only their baser instincts. It will walk around aimlessly, reacting to anything it might hear or see, until it can find its prey. Again, in this case, you. Unfortunately, most modern zombies tend to sprint rather than their slow, rigor mortis bound counterpart back in the day. I'm talking 60s, like Dawn of the Dead, not the remake, the original one, and the Night of the Living Dead series. The virus generally transfers by way of liquids, meaning a bite from the modern zombie is enough to infect you. Any open wounds you may have can be infected by any liquid from a modern zombie, may it be blood, sweat, saliva, or otherwise. So let's go back to the situation we have at hand. You're staring down a freshly animated zombie, and more are probably coming your way. First thing you want to do is get the dog inside. This would be your first tactic in the zombie apocalypse. Your dog is currently freaking out and barking, which makes her a foghorn to your location for any zombies in the area. You may want to turn off all the lights in the house too once you've secured the dog and make it seem like the house is empty. Close any curtains or blinds that you may have and lock all your doors, again after securing the dog. Do not leave your dog outside. You may think that, hold on, the zombie already saw me looking at it and he heard the dog, and you, KDG, said that these things are relentless until they can get us, me and the dog. What keeps it from just staying? Well, for the time being, yes, it did see you and your dog, and chances are it's trying to get inside the house. So don't worry, because something else that is not you is going to make noise, or some kind of light will attract it away, because you are, of course, in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. It's bound to happen. At that point, you're mostly safe from the current situation. For now, anyways. So let's learn more about the modern zombie. Modern zombies tend to bunch up together as a group. Not much is known or explained as to why this tends to happen, but usually they're being led there by some kind of sound or visual cue, much like in the mall in the Dawn of the Dead, or that apartment building in Alive. Which brings me to another point. If you think you're going to be safe inside a mall or a grocery store, so long as you secure it, just forget about it. Any place that carries supplies will often get raided early, so chances are you're only getting what's left of the raids. There's also an issue of the number of people like you who had the same idea and is already on their way there too. Chances are, again, they're bringing a huge number of zombies with them as well. Depends on how careful they are. But big places are to be avoided at all costs because of the noise and the fact that these things are made to be looked at from the inside. It just makes for a hotbed for both the modern zombie and the potential infected people that are coming in. it's much safer to stay indoors, making as little noise as possible. Just be sure to have your pantry stocked up on food. It might also be best to collect as much water as you can, because water is still usually easy to come by in the first few days of the zombie apocalypse, because most systems are still running. It might be a good idea to charge any kind of device that you're using for communication, such as your phone, your laptop, or even power banks if you have them, because electricity would be the next thing that'll fizzle out. You may want to get as much information as you can until then for things like rescue efforts, updates on the outbreak, and any other important piece of information. This would be the time to also talk to your loved ones and tell them to do the same in the hopes that you can all survive together. Again, there is no reason for you guys to try and get to each other unless things have calmed down, and I understand where you might be coming from, that you're scared to be alone, or if you're ever gonna see them again, but trust me, it is better this way, at least for now. You have to wait until things have calmed down before you try going out and going to these places where they are, where your family is, your boyfriend or girlfriend is, because you're just one more person that may or may not be an addition to the whole population that's already been infected. So let's treat this situation like a storm that needs to pass. That's a good rule of thumb. So let's go back to the situation we started with. You're inside the house, you've calmed down your dog so she's not making noise anymore, all the doors are locked and the curtains are drawn. You breathe a sigh of relief as you check your phone for any updates. You see that the government has started mobilizing rescue efforts in your area, and the military is advising people to stay in their homes. You go back to your pantry to check how much food you have left, and seeing plenty, you and your dog go back to your room and try to sleep in the middle of the apocalypse. Congratulations, you just survived your horror movie scenario. And that will do it for tonight's episode. Just a quick, fun little episode on how to survive your generic, modern zombie apocalypse situation. Try saying that 5 times fast because I can't even say it once. At least, this is in the best case scenario. Of course, stuff is gonna go wrong and maybe not go your way that much. Maybe you don't have a dog, it depends. But next time, maybe I'll do a more dramatic one. Okay, maybe not next time, but in the future, as a short story. Who knows? I'll take a look at it, see if I can do something like that. I've always wanted to, but again, like I mentioned from previous episodes, the zombie genre for me has passed a little bit, but I figured because of the whole situation we're in right now, I'm talking about the pandemic, I figured at the very least we can just hunker down and, deal with it like a modern zombie apocalypse situation. It's so hard to say. Anyway, if you like content like this and you want to see more, you can check out the previous episodes of the Dark Hour podcast here on my channel. I made a playlist for it, so it's easy for everyone to see. You can also listen to the Dark Hour podcast on Spotify and all other podcast playing services. Also, if you're listening via Spotify, they've started putting in ratings for the podcast, so I would highly appreciate it if you can give us a rating and if you like the content. But I hope you guys are staying safe out there. Again, this has been the Dark Hour podcast, and I am your host, KDG, saying good fright and good night.